Welcome back to Diversity in Central Ohio for our second segment of this show. This is a show of the Columbus Community Relations Commission. We are on every third Tuesday night at 7:30. It's a live call-in show. And every Tuesday night at 7:30, you can see a show of the Community Relations Commission, and we'd like you to join us for all of our shows. We have special guests, and I'm here with my co-host, Neal Semel. Hi, Neal.
Hello, Nelson.
And we have special guests tonight as we think about the Martin Luther King celebration that's coming up and this great program of the city. We have as guests with us on this segment, Dan Willis, the president of First Class Events, and Dan is the director of the city's celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King and has been for 12 years.
Long time.
Hello, Dan.
Hello,
Welcome
good to
to
be
our show again.
Thank you.
And with Dan Willis tonight, we also have Lindsay Johnson, a recent graduate of the Ohio State University and a writer for the program. We have two of the writers. The other writer is Lee Mashiter, who is a senior and close to graduation at the Ohio State University. Welcome to our show, all of you. Glad to have you with us tonight. One of the first things we always ask our guests on this show is, what is diversity to you? And we'd like to hear that from each of you tonight.
Diversity to me is understanding. I took a class in protocol years ago, and they said you can never go wrong if you ask before you act. So diversity to me is a sensitivity of asking what's going on, what do I need to know, how should I interact before I take any action at all. Because I think it's kind of rude to take my actions over your actions without asking first.
Interesting.
I would say that diversity to me is just being enlightened by any and everybody. You're taking the best of every world and learning from any person you meet, and I think that's very important to respect everyone's viewpoint.
Thank you, Lindsay. Lee?
I would say that diversity is the recognition that the world is not the same shape as you are. That's a little trite on the surface, but I think it's really important to understand that the majority of the world is actually happening outside of your own head. So it's easy to forget that.
Can you tell they're writers? And by the way, these are just two of the four writers that we have. The other two writers had obligations tonight, weren't able to be here. Ashley McAtee and Julie Brown are the other two writers that were on the team too.
Well, this is school break, so we can understand they're away from us. But Dan, what does our audience have in store this year? What do they have to look forward to on January the 18th, 2010?
Well, we're going to have our annual celebration of Dr. King again, which will be wonderful at Vest Memorial. It's going to be at 6 o'clock. We go live. Channel 3 will tape it for us. But we celebrate that every year. It's a national holiday. But I think what's important to understand is that we celebrate birthdays all the time, but why do we celebrate this particular birth date? Dr. King saw it as what our responsibility in our community is a day on rather than a day off. After his assassination in 1968, in 1983, President Reagan signed the legislation to make this a holiday. And I think that a national holiday, and I think what happens is that if we don't understand what's behind this holiday, we lose over 80% of the reason for this holiday. And I think what's important is to talk about Dr. King's legacy every birthday so that it can act as a guiding map for us for the rest of the year. He talks about the beloved community, and so our celebration every year looks at that beloved community in a different way. And we strive to make the legacy that's almost 44 years old relevant to young people and not so young people today after 44 years. So we have a wonderful program that's family focused, celebrate the legacy, a voice in the crowd. I call it edutainment. It's really a mixture of education and entertainment so that you can hear people dramatically, our actors read the scripts or memorize the scripts, hopefully, that our writers have written. And then we have local entertainment that supports that action that happens. And again, this year we're focusing on seldom heard speeches of Dr. King, like The Great American Dream. We're looking at sermons that he's given in other places that show how expansive this man was. We only see him as a civil rights leader, but he was a peacemaker. He was a social justice person. He had all these wonderful things. So this year we're going to really highlight all the different dimensions, or some of the dimensions, of Dr. King for our audience.
Dan, I've been watching these programs. I have the honor to watch these programs now for 14, 15 years, 12 of which you've kind of been at the helm. How do you come up with these visions? How do you come up with these plans and the theme and the script? And there's so much that goes into that. Can you talk about that process? I mean, we just show up and there it is, ready, done, it looks great. But I know you start working on this a year in advance.
Yeah.
Tell us about that process.
Well, we start in July. We work with an internship at The Ohio State University. And this is our my fifth year working with the internship at The Ohio State University. And they have a selection process where they select students who are going to be on this team. And it's a collaborative team. And what I do is I work with their employees there, and we have a concept that we put on the table. And it's a framework, and it takes some time for them to understand what the framework is, but then once they get it, they're on board. And then we write, and we rewrite, and we rewrite. And we just closed the script December 4th, which was really great.
Wow.
But it's a good thing to work with students who bring, I think this is one of the things I was saying before, the students that we work with bring a freshness to this 44-year-old legacy in a way that I still see it back in 1968 because I was in grade school when he was assassinated. But the young people that see it are reading his words for the first time and have a different interpretation to it and try and show a relevancy of his words in today's audience.
So this was a chance for collaborative writing. Yes. When I was a grad student many, many years ago, the first time I was asked to write a collaborative paper was a truly unique experience because...
This is quill broke.
So is this the first time for you to write collaboratively, and how has that part of it been for the two of you, Lindsay and Lee?
This is my first time writing collaboratively, and it was actually a pleasure because everybody brought something to the table, and we used each other's strengths to build our scripts. And though each scene is given to a specific writer, everybody contributed to it, and it made it easy. Everyone was really respectful, and I appreciated myself because it helped me basically become a more seasoned writer.
I found it to be a real pleasure to work with Dan and the other writers, and it was there was a lot to learn in a short period that felt shorter, ironically, every time we met. And it was just one of the reasons the time flew by was enjoyment of it, but we were working really hard every
What drew you to
time.
do this in the first place? I mean, you're busy, you got a lot of work. I mean, I know being a student, so what drew you to this as an extra something to do?
Well, I'd actually met Dan in one of the lecture classes for my minor. I'm working on an English degree, but as part of that I have a minor through OSU's minor in professional writing, which is the partnership that Dan mentioned that for the past 5 years of this program he's been working through. And I had the pleasure of meeting Dan. We had a symposium that the students of that class at that time put together, and I was in the group that was working on a short bio for Dan and thinking about what he would be addressing our class on. So when our professor, Trish Houston, approached me with the opportunity to work with him, as I told Dan, initially it was actually my second choice, but yeah. It was actually, I'm glad it turned out that way, and I'm really happy with the opportunity.
Very nice. How about you?
I was at the symposium as well. We've been classmates quite a while. And Trish Houston, I also have the professional writing minor. And Trish Houston came to me and asked me did I want to be a part of the team. And I was really interested in it because it would be my first opportunity to script write. And it's something that I've never done before. So I thought that would be cool. And just the fact that it would be Martin Luther King, and I would be able to see how this one man made a movement and changed so many lives, and it's still continuing to change lives. I thought that would be very important to be a part of.
Well, he's a writer. In a way, I mean, Dr. King.
Oh,
So
no
for
question.
a writer, I mean, he's kind of a writer's writer. I mean, because he delivers speeches. So there's I guess there's a kind of kindred connection when you get into who he is.
One of the things that helps too is that the way that, not to get into too much of the process, but there's a lot of research that goes on. So there's a lot of awareness of how he writes, his style of writing, how does he address different audiences. And so they go through the research, and then we start developing the scripts. And then we whittle it and change it and alter it, and we used his words as he wrote them to create these wonderful things. And then there's segments that they both write that are creative writing that are part of it too. But that's where that creative writing comes out, and they had this attention. And they were always, the cool thing about it is, you know, teachers talk about their students sometimes, but I can say very honestly that they were always prepared, and they were always excited about what they wrote. And it makes it very easy to be successful and have a very good script. You know, we don't have a lot of money for a lot of lights, but we have a very good script for that. So that's why it's a wonderful educational program.
Well, you've been a miracle worker. People know that the city's budget and the economic times have made it very difficult. What is exciting to me as a person who works for the city and is a part of Columbus